Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to another Starfield video, and today we are going to talk all things spaceships, which seems appropriate given the topic. So we're going to have a little talk about space flight, building spaceships, and of course, space battles as well. So let's jump into this. Okay, so as you are probably aware by now, we got our first look at the gameplay from Starfield at the weekend. It was very, very cool. Definitely very excited over that. Really enjoyed watching that. Have watched it back way too many times already, but we're going to have to look at it a little bit more today. So, spaceships. Lots of very, very cool stuff there. We've also got a little bit of extra information via an IGN interview that Todd Howard gave following the Sunday showcase. So there's a whole bunch of little bits of information in there. There's some stuff about Fallout 5 as well when the time comes for that. But mostly it's on Starfield, and we've got some information about ships and stuff that we'll dip into here. So, let's have a look at some of the stuff we've got to talk about. First up, space flight. So this one has been a hotly debated topic on Twitter ever since we got some news, and we got a little bit of extra confirmation. Initially, some of this via the footage that we saw at the weekend, and more via this IGN article that Todd Howard was involved in. The big thing that is the topic of conversation, obviously, is landing on planets and how they're going to approach that. So the general gist of it is going to be that you will select a place that you want to land, you press your button, there'll be a loading sequence probably hidden behind a cutscene of sorts that sees your ship come in to land on the surface of the planet, rather than the other approach wherein you would manually fly down through the atmosphere and land yourself. So Todd Howard cited the reason for this being its value to the player, i.e. being able to land yourself, versus the amount of extra work it would take to set that system up and the time it would detract from other things they could be working on. And ultimately, basically, they felt that it wasn't really adding enough to the gameplay and the player experience to put the time in to develop that particular feature. And I think that's probably a wise decision for myself. In other games where that's the case, there's kind of a couple of ways that they can go with this. If you look at games like No Man's Sky, it was one of the big ones that's getting cited in comparison to Starfield. The way that basically works is you fly towards a planet and straight down through the atmosphere and you land quite swiftly. It's rather simplified in that, but it does allow you to transition quite quickly from space, well, quite smoothly from space to the planet. On the other hand, what's going on behind the scenes, I've got no idea, but I think we can imply from this there's probably quite a lot going on behind the scenes. The other scale of that, of course, is if you look at something more hardcore space sim like, say, Elite Dangerous, wherein landing on a planet is an operation in that particular game. It involves getting yourself into the appropriate position to sort of orbit the planet, then entering the atmosphere at the right time, and controlling your ship as it behaves differently now that you are inside the atmosphere and uses different systems, and you've got to get it down to the right position, you've got to fly it in just the right way, otherwise you come crashing out and you'll end up in the slow kind of manual flying way before where you want to be. So much more complicated. Both systems are quite cool, but once you've done it a few times, you've kind of done it a few times. Landing on a planet seems exciting the first few times, as I say, but after a while, the more complex it is, the more of a drag it's going to get. And the smoother they make it, the quicker they make it, the less realistic, I suppose, in the sense that it will be. And it's still going to be, I've done this now, let's move on. And even if people are still enjoying it, sooner or later they're going to reach a stage when they're ready to move on with that sort of thing and just get to the planet and get on with the next thing. Which, given the scale of, 1,000 planets to land on, that's going to happen sooner or later, I think, to most players. So I see where they're coming from, especially if it's going to take as long as Todd Howard is implying to develop such a system, then I can see why they didn't. The key parts of this game are the gameplay part in either space or on the planet. The transition between the two is kind of a nice-to-have gimmick if it were there, really, but not really a big part of the story. It is, after all, a RPG in space rather than a space sim, so I can kind of understand where they're going from on that. I know a lot of people feel differently. Personally, I think it's probably a good call. It'll focus on the stuff that is more what the game is about rather than just this one little thing, which is not such a bad thing, in my opinion. So we know that space and planets are going to be separate, probably separated by some sort of loading screen. Hopefully, with modern technology and all that, it'll be reasonably swift to move between the two situations. And obviously, we've seen bits of the ships coming into land and taking off as well through the footage that we've got already. So there's a good indication there that it's going to look quite cool and be reasonably swift, I suspect, is the way they'll try and go with that. So outside of the whole landing on planets thing, sort of what can we do with the ship? Well, we've seen obviously some space combat, which I'll touch on in a bit more, but it looks like you'll be able to fly around the planets, fly around inside star systems, go and find space stations to dock with other ships. These seem to be part of quests as well to do these things. I think that it's probably going to be a case of some abandoned space stations to explore, things like that, maybe some not-so-abandoned ones. All manner of things like that will be quite cool to do. So we'll be flying up, we'll be docking with those, that sort of thing. We'll be able to fly, from the look of things, you'll be able to fly between planets, but once you arrive there, then you'll select the process to land. It also looks like, from some of the footage we saw on Sunday, that you'll be able to just say, I want to go to this planet from the map, select it, and just fly straight there, which will probably streamline that whole process if that's what you want to do. It gives you options that way, so if you're trying to get somewhere, get on with a quest, something like that, or go hunting for a resource or whatever, you'll be able to just crack right on, whereas if you want to fly around in space and explore, that's also available to you. So sounds like we're going to get a bit of both there, which is quite cool. Obviously, sort of trying to prize this out of the footage here and read between the lines of what they showed us and what they said, so margin for error on how true that's going to be, but it seems likely to be the case given that we know there's space combat, so that kind of implies flying around in space, doesn't it? So it'd be interesting to see more about this as time goes on, and obviously as we get nearer to the game's launch, we're going to see a whole load more stuff, but yeah, definitely interested to see that. Pulling out into the other direction, really, we talk about flying between stars, different star systems, different solar systems. Obviously, much larger distances involved in that. We know we need to use a thing called a Grav drive to do that and do a Grav jump, to jump between star systems. The very first little clip of footage from this weekend showcase showed what looked like a galaxy map, whether or not it's a stylized version or it's the actual thing, who knows, wherein the player is in one star system and is trying to travel to another and can't actually jump the distance. The straight line between them has got a little kind of double slash through it and a gap in between saying you can't get that far. And you see them select a third system and kind of zigzag their way there because they can make the two jumps, even though they can't make the one on its own. So it looks like that's going to be a thing. We're going to have to kind of plot our course a little bit. It also seems likely from that we'll be able to upgrade the Grav Jive, and it sounds like this from stuff Todd Howard said in his IGN article, which I will also link down below, as well as obviously the showcase. It does sound like we'll be able to upgrade those ships and those Grav Drives and be able to jump further as we do that. It also seems possible, as we look like we'll be able to hire crew members for our ship, that maybe they'll improve things like jump range and stuff like that, and functionality of stuff. A shield specialist, for example, might improve your ship's shields, or maybe they'll improve the rate at which they regenerate when you're taking damage. Might be interesting to find out, but it looks like there's going to be a lot of different dynamics to that. So, speaking of upgrading your ship, we have seen already in the footage that they put out on Sunday that we will be able to make modifications to our ship. We'll be able to customize our ship, which is very cool. Obviously, they've showed us that there are different modules you can get from different manufacturers in presumably slightly different styles. We can also do visual customizations. So if you want to fly around in a neon hot pink spaceship, you absolutely can do that. That is your choice, which is cool if that's your bag. Don't know what I'm going to do. Color scheme. Maybe black, red, and gold. Stick with the channel colors. But we'll have to see. It should be fun when the time comes. Like, customizing spaceships is going to be a lot of fun, and also being able to sort out what different sort of setups you want. It also sounds like, on a cool related note to this, we might be able to have more than one ship as we progress through the game. If that's the case, then you might want to consider designing ships around different roles. So if you are going out resource gathering or something like that, maybe you'll want something that is geared better towards that. If you want a fighting type ship, you're going to go and take out some pirates, for example. Maybe you want something that's more heavily spec'd towards that. Or maybe you want a separate one that jumps further for longer journeys, perhaps. Who knows? Obviously, we need to find out a lot more information about that, but such things will undoubtedly be built into the customization and module system that will improve the upgrades of your ship and its performance. So that'll be very cool as we find out more about it, and definitely looks like something that's going to be fun to dive into. At the very least, it's going to be cool to make different sort of sizes and shapes and designs of ships, so looking forward to that. Yeah, one other cool thing that we did get shown in the footage on Sunday about sort of designing a ship, of course, was that different modules and the attachment and configuration of them is going to directly affect the layout of the inside of your ship, which makes sense. That's sort of, it would do, obviously. However, actually making that a reality in a game is something that no game that I am aware of, I could be wrong on this, so don't quote me, but certainly the majority of games don't manage to do that. Changes to your ship are not usually reflected in the internal layout. So So the fact that this is going to be something we can affect and change, and that the interior of your ship will change based on the choices you make in terms of its design is, I'm not going to go quite so far as to say unprecedented, but at the very least a very, very rare level of customization and impact for customization to any form of vehicle, in this case a spaceship. But that's really, really cool. I think that's a really cool feature. Related to that, the footage that kind of gives this away is also showing us the fact that we can hire crew members for our ship. So Todd Howard did mention in the showcase on Sunday about hiring crew members for your outposts, your bases, but it does look like there are different crew members in the player's ship. They seem to be interacting with different terminals, presumably carrying out different roles. Obviously, we need to find out a lot more about this, but it does look like if we can hire them for our outposts, we'll probably be able to hire them to perform certain duties on our ship and improve its functionality as well. It seems like the likely case. The big question here, of course, is how does that particular system interact with the companion system? We know we're going to have companions. You know, they're going to be joining us as we wander around planet surfaces and shoot bad guys and so on and so forth. Will those companions have a role to play on your ship, or will they be separate and it will just be people you hire? Or will they overlap? Sounds like most of these people you hire won't be joining you in your wandering around the planet's surface and kicking pirates out of outposts and things like that. But the companions obviously will be, so it'd be interesting to sort of see if there's a crossover and where that crossover might be, and what role companions might have to play in the performance of your ship too. Obviously, this is something we're going to have to wait and find out when we get a bit more information, either at release, or hopefully, maybe even before then, because I would imagine we're going to get a whole bunch between now and sort of release, so I can't imagine Bethesda will stop sharing information. So I'm looking forward to that too. So harking back to that possibly multiple ships thing, we're kind of reading between the lines a little bit there. It's not extremely clear that we will be able to have multiple ships. It sounded like that's what Todd Howard was implying at the showcase, that you can build ships, but he could just be referring to the player base building ships as opposed to an individual person having multiples. But another thing that lends some credence to the idea we can have more than one ship, quite a strong bit of credence in fact, is that we can steal other people's ships. This is something Pete Hines mentioned on Tuesday at the extended showcase, and has also been confirmed by Todd Howard here in the IGN interview, is that yes, you can get on board other ships, you can hop into the cockpit and steal people's ships and make off with them. So the implications of that are quite interesting, possibly having multiple ships of our own. That's quite cool. What will happen if you do? Well, I imagine if you do it somewhere like New Atlantis, the local police force, or the equivalent thereof, are probably not going to like you very much. So it's possible you might end up with bounties on your head. Who knows? That might be cool. You might run into bounty hunters. You might run into space police who want to pull you over and presumably shoot you, or take the ship back. Who knows? That seems like a possibility. The other question is, kind of tying it into a bit of a Fallout observation here, if you're flying a Crimson Raider ship, will the Crimson Raiders shoot you on sight because you stole one of their ships? Or will they think you're one of them? Who knows? So it seems maybe possible that different faction ships might allow you to pass as a member of that faction when you're flying that ship. Who knows? It might give you a good reason to steal their ship other than just taking it off their hands. Obviously, can you sell these things? We know we can buy ship modules as well as craft them. Should have mentioned that before, but there we go. So maybe you can sell entire ships. Who knows? That'd be a good way to make credits. Go out and steal the pirate ships and flog them all. There's a whole load of possibilities in there that kind of haven't really been explored yet, and it'd be very, very interesting to see how that pans out, what we can do with it, and what that might imply. There's a lot of potential gameplay bits and pieces that are attached to that, and Todd Howard's implied in his interviews here with IGN as well that there's a lot more bits and gameplay mechanics attached to the ship and surrounding ships than has really been highlighted so far. So there's going to be more going on there than we are aware of yet, which is very, very cool, including some quests and the like, both presumably parts of the main story and side quests that will tie into the ship and the functionality of it and what you use it for, which stands to reason in a space exploration sci-fi RPG, really, doesn't it? So yeah, one of the other questions I had off the back of that whole stealing ships, of course, is maybe that'd be a good way to learn new modules as well, new pieces to put onto your own main ship. If the ship that you've stolen's got some kind of module that you don't have, maybe that'll add it to the system, or maybe you can break it down and add it to the system to add to your own ship. That'd be quite cool. But sort of related to the whole, how are people going to react to stealing their ships, we have space combat to talk about, because that seems like a likely outcome of stealing somebody's ships, especially if their mates have ships. So, space combat, what do we know about it? The obvious comparison that people are making at the moment is No Man's Sky, and the big reason for that is, well, the high-level surface layer of how it looks, in that when you're either in first-person mode and you're kind of dragging a circle cursor around within a larger circle and the ship sort of follows that, that's very much similar to the way No Man's Sky does it, and also you can hop back out into a third-person view, and presumably, it certainly looks to be the case that you can fly your ship in a third-person view if you want. And that goes into combat as well, and you can fly from that point of view. Personally, I think I'll be leaning towards the inside the cockpit vibe, just for that immersion and fun, because the cockpits look really, really cool. We know that you're going to be involved with systems management as well, so it kind of relates to a more sort of hardcore style of space sim in that regard. So I think it's fair to say Starfield's kind of going down a bit of a middle road here, in that you'll be adjusting the amount of power applied to your weapons, to your shields, to your engines, things like that, in order to adjust the efficiency of certain features of your ship. So, do you want to be more maneuverable, put more power into your engines? Do you want to be able to take more hits, boost those shields up? Do you want to dish out more damage when you've got the advantage, transfer that power over to your weapons? Are you absolutely screwed and need to run like hell? In that case, power up your Grav drive and get out. All of this is going to be decisions that we're going to have to be making as we do space combat. So, Todd Howard's described it as kind of a combination between FTL and Mech Warrior in styles. Now, I can't read too much into that because I have not played either of those games, but he seems to be referring to it being a bit slower paced. I suspect one of the major reasons for that is, firstly, they've never done anything like this before and it's probably easier to make. And secondly, if it's a bit slower and more manageable and approachable like that, it will be, to use that word again, approachable. So for players who are not into hardcore flight sims and stuff like that, and more RPG-centric, getting into space combat, if it's a bit more approachable, will probably be easier. It'll widen the potential audience of the game, which makes sense as Bethesda are known for RPGs, not, space sims. So sort of bridging the gap there, they're going to want to find a middle ground, I think. That certainly seems to be a sensible decision. But so far, it does look fun. We've obviously got upgrades, as I said before, to your ship, which will include weapons and shields and things like that. We saw lasers being used in the footage so far. Obviously, it seems to be the case that there will be other weapons available for your ship as well, beyond just those lasers. They haven't shown them yet, so this is a bit speculatory, but it seems like a likely thing given how extensive the modification system looks already, and certainly the variety of weapons on the ground. It seems likely that they would apply a similar principle to spaceships as well. So maybe we'll have rockets, maybe we'll have different kinds of weaponry that we can attach to the ships. So one of the things Todd Howard did talk about in this IGN interview was that there are less direct approaches to space combat, which means not just the obvious dogfighting, flying and shooting ships out of space kind of approach, but you'll be able to do other stuff like disabling ships, boarding ships, docking with them, stuff like that, and that will tie into the space combat system. We saw a little bit of some of that going on, although we didn't really see anything to imply that the player had disabled those ships. But it seems like, from what Todd Howard has been saying in this interview, you'll be able to, in some way, disable an enemy ship, dock with it, board it, and if you want to take it out of the fight that way, maybe go on board and sort of go corridor to corridor with your small arms and take out the crew, which would then leave you with a somewhat damaged, but potentially still operable spaceship that you might be able to capture. Of course, what you're going to do with your docked ship, I don't know. Maybe you can fly them both together. Who knows? Might be interesting. But it does seem to be the case, from what Todd Howard is saying in this interview, that we'll actually have other alternatives available to us rather than just blasting them, which is potentially quite interesting. He's also referenced this as being tied into quests as well, so it seems like boarding enemy ships is going to be a quest-related thing that we'll be wanting to do. So it opens a whole level of dynamics and stuff to space combat and interaction with other ships, beyond just getting into fights with them, which is quite cool. There's also likely to be things like docking with space stations and other ships potentially to trade and things like that. And he also mentioned things like smuggling as a possibility. Whether that means if you join the Crimson Fleet and want to smuggle past the local security forces, who knows? Maybe it means some civilians need medical supplies and you've got to smuggle past some kind of organisation that's blocking the arrival of those medical supplies, and maybe you've got to smuggle them down to the planet. Who knows? There's a lot of different ways they could do that, a lot of different angles for different play styles that could work into that, which would be quite cool. We also know that the planet that Neon's on is the only place you can find a certain drug, Aurora, if I remember rightly it was called. It's also the only place that drug is legal, it is possible that the factions involved in that planet may want to retain your services as a smuggler and have you smuggle their drug off-world to other places. Who knows? There's a lot of different ways that they could take that, and a lot of different ways that they could take space combat and expand it and sort of space flight and spaceship interaction type mechanics and do some interesting stuff. So, looking forward to finding out a lot more about this. I suspect Bethesda will give us a closer look at this sort of thing between now and launch. It seems like the sort of thing they do, so definitely watch this space. If they do, I will be all over that, and I definitely want to get as much information out of this as I can. Definitely hyped to hear out that. There's a whole bunch of other mechanics and bits and pieces of the game as well that I want to talk about in subsequent videos. Some are going to be on down the line because we just haven't seen enough yet to really have much to say about it. And others I might talk about a bit sooner. So make sure you hit that notification bell if you want to keep up with everything Starfield, because I'm definitely going to be following this game very hotly, and I'm very, very, very hyped for it. But for now, I hope you guys found this little talk about spaceships, spaceflight, and all that good stuff interesting and informative, and I hope you guys are looking forward to it as much as I am. Let me know your thoughts down below. I've got to say, I do feel like, much as I would like the whole landing on planet systems, and I enjoy the more hardcore space sim stuff to an extent, I have played some, I would also see the advantages of it being more streamlined and focusing on other areas of the game and putting developers, so limited such as it is, time into other resources as well and other parts of the game. So I'm okay with that particular decision. It would be cool. I can also see kind of the shortcomings of having that planet-side landing system as well. And as for the combat and stuff like that, I think making it approachable, it looks interesting, it looks fun, it looks very, very stylish. The graphical design of it and the way it looks to play it looks like it's going to be good fun to me. And obviously interacting with ships in other ways beyond just shooting them is going to be interesting as well, and opens up a lot of interesting possibilities for the role-playing and the living, breathing world of Starfield, or universe might be a better word there. So definitely interested for that. So do let me know what you guys think. If you did enjoy this video though, please do consider dropping subs and likes. I very much appreciate it. Down below the video as well, we've got the links to the IGN article and the showcase at the weekend as well, if you want to check those out again. And of course, we've got social media links, a merch store, and channel memberships, and all those good buttons as well down there if you're interested in supporting the channel in that way. I very, very much appreciate it. It really helps out. Massive thank you to everyone who's done that already. And if you get a chance to join us for live streams as well, we are coming towards the end of Mass Effect 3, and we're going to pick up Doom Eternal after that, I think. Should be good fun. And we are, of course, playing the new season of Fallout 76 as well at the moment, so do hope you'll join us for that. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.